Hey, welcome back to the Pastoral Finance Podcast. I'm Todd Huckel, and this is episode 6. I want to talk about a question that doesn't usually get asked out loud in a meeting with other people. It gets asked in a private conversation in a hallway or maybe in an email or late at night after everyone's gone to bed. When my spouse passes, do I keep the housing allowance? And it's almost always that spouse of the spouse of the minister who's asking this question. And I'm going to give you a straight answer because the wrong answer here is expensive, and a lot of couples are carrying the wrong answer around without even knowing it. The answer is no. I'm going to say it flat out because softening it doesn't help anybody plan. When a minister dies, the housing allowance on their account ends with them. Their surviving spouse cannot claim it on that account. Not partially, not a reduced rate. It ends. It's gone. And I already know the next question because it's always the next question I get. What if they are ordained too? What if they've been in ministry right beside them for the last 40 years? The answer is still no, not on their account. That's not my opinion. The IRS addresses it back in a Revenue Ruling 72-249 for those who want to go look it up. And church pension boards have been saying the same thing ever since. Here's the reason. Once you see it, the rule stops feeling arbitrary and it starts making sense. The housing allowance comes out of a minister's own ministry. It's compensation for their service. It attaches to them, to their work, to their credential. It was never a household benefit. It never belonged to the marriage. It belonged to the ministry. So when that ministry ends, that benefit tied to it ends with it. The spouse inherits the account, of course, but they do not inherit the ministry that created the tax treatment. Now, if they are credentialed, if they're a credentialed minister with their own retirement account from their own ministry, that's a completely separate thing. Their account, their service, their benefit, but they cannot stack their credentials onto their spouse's account to keep their housing allowance breathing. Two accounts, two different sources. This is one of those places where good instincts produce a bad guess. It feels like it ought to transfer, but it doesn't. And here's why this matters more than it first sounds. When a pastor dies, two things happen to the household finances at the same moment, and they both push the same direction. First, income drops. One Social Security check stops. Any remaining ministry income stops as well. Second, and this is the part that nobody sees coming, the tax bill on what's left goes up, not down. It goes up. Two reasons for that. The housing allowance exclusion is gone, so distributions that were coming out free of federal income tax are now fully taxable. And after the year of death, that spouse files as a single payer instead of jointly. Single brackets are narrower. The same dollars get taxed harder. Less money coming in, a bigger slice of it going out to taxes. People sometimes call that the widow's penalty. And for a ministry family, it lands harder than most because the housing allowance was doing so much quiet work in that budget. Here's what that looks like in real life. A couple sits down, looks at the account balance, and feels right about it. What they're actually looking at is the joint filing housing allowance version of that number. The surviving spouse version of the exact same account is meaningfully smaller, and nobody ever showed them the second number. Let me balance this because I don't want anybody hearing something worse than what's true. The surviving spouse does not lose the money. The account is theirs if they are the named beneficiary. That balance in that account passes on to them. And a surviving spouse generally has options a non-spouse beneficiary doesn't get, including treating the account as their own. The savings are intact. What changes is the tax treatment on it. Every dollar is still sitting there. More of each dollar now goes to the IRS than it did while he was living. So this isn't a story about a widow losing their retirement. It's a story about the same retirement not stretching as far as the couple had assumed. That's a planning problem, and planning problems have solutions as long as somebody finds them early. Let's say the surviving spouse is the wife. She has her own credentials and her own account from her own ministry. That account keeps its own treatment. Hers doesn't change because his ended. Four things, none of them complicated. One, run the survivor number, ask it out loud. If I died this year, what does her income and her tax picture actually look like next year? That's the number that matters, and most couples have never seen it. Two, check the beneficiary form, not your will. The beneficiary form on the account is what controls where that money goes. I've seen forms still naming a parent, an ex spouse, nobody at all. It takes 10 minutes to verify. Three, look honestly at whether there's a gap and what would fill it. For a lot of families, some term life insurance during the working years is the least expensive tool for that job. That's a conversation worth having with somebody who isn't paid by the size of the policy. Four, have the conversation together out loud. So many ministry spouses have no idea what accounts exist, who to call, or what happens first. That knowledge should not live in one person's head. Write it down, one page where everything is and who to contact. Paul wrote something to Timothy that lands here. If anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. 1 Timothy chapter 5. That's strong language, and notice he isn't talking about this week's groceries. Providing means thinking past yourself. It means the people who depend on you are still standing when you're not there to hold them up. For a pastor, that's a spiritual assignment as much as a financial one. You've spent a career sitting with other families in the worst week of their lives. Your own family deserves that same forethought. And let me say this gently. Planning for it isn't morbid, and it isn't a lack of faith. It's love done early while there's still time for it to work. One thing this week, pull up the beneficiary designation on your retirement account and read the name out loud. That's the whole assignment. Know who it is. If it's right, you're done in 5 minutes and you'll sleep better tonight. If it's wrong, you just caught something that would have done real damage at the worst possible moment. And if you want to think through the bigger survivor picture, I write about this over at pastoralfinance.com. So the honest answer, no, the housing allowance does not carry over to a surviving spouse. It ends with the minister whose ministry created it. That's not a reason to be afraid. It's a reason to look at it now. While looking is easy. The couples who handle this well are the ones who sat down together on an ordinary Tuesday years early and just asked the question. Quick reminder before we go. This show is for education and encouragement, not personalized financial or tax advice. Before you act on anything, talk it through with a qualified professional who knows clergy taxes and your situation. Hey, thanks for spending this time with me. Go check that beneficiary form, and I'll see you next time.